Masechet Kiddushin, Daf Mem Bet. We're speaking about sending messengers, because we just said that a husband can send a messenger to do Kiddushin, a wife can send a messenger to receive Kiddushin, and then we're talking about Shalichim for other things and how we know that those are valid as well. And we talked about Kodashim, how you know you can send someone to offer a sacrifice on your behalf, and Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha learned it from Korban Pesach, where it says V'shachatu oto kol kehal adat Yisrael ben harbaim. So what do you mean? The whole congregation is going to offer a sacrifice? How could every single person do it? Rather, one person does it on behalf of a whole group. So here you have a source that someone can send an agent on behalf of themselves. Now that's a good source, but then we ask, okay, we have a good source, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, but Rabbi Yonatan uses that very same pasuk to learn a different law. If so, where is he going to learn the law that you can send a shaliach for a korban? So first let's see what he does with that pasuk. The Tanya, Rabbi Yonatan Omer, how do you know that the whole nation of Israel can fulfill their commandment with just one little sheep? Now, even though obviously that sheep will not be enough for everybody in the whole nation to have a piece of it, nevertheless, if there's only one, there's only, for whatever reason, they can only sacrifice just one sheep, that's okay. Everybody can join in that sheep and fulfill their obligation. How do you know that that's true? Shachatu oto kol kehal adat Yisrael ben harbaim v'chi kol kolam shochatim v'lo eno shoat el echad el mikan shekol Yisrael yoseim bepesach echad. Now it says that the whole congregation will slaughter it. Wait, can the whole congregation all slaughter? Everybody's going to bring their own korban, right? That would be overwhelming. It'd be impossible. In fact, there's only one from each group. So, in fact, you can have one each group. We learn further that you can have one for the whole entire nation, because it's kol kehal adat Yisrael shachatu oto, singular. So, if it was necessary, and even though you didn't get a piece of the korban, still you joined in with the whole nation, and thereby you fulfilled your obligation. So now he uses this drasha for this other law about one sheep for the whole nation. So shaliach b'kodashim minaleh. From where will he learn that in general someone can send a messenger on one's behalf? So we answer simply mineh, or from this very law, right? Even though he's using it for a slightly different law than Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha did, but actually it ends up being the same point, because here all of the nation can use one sheep. That means that they're all sending one guy, right? One guy, you take the sheep and you're doing this on behalf of everybody as a shaliach. So this source itself proves that you can make a shaliach for Korban Pesach, and therefore also for other types of other sacrifices. We say no, but maybe over there it's not working from the law of shalichut, but rather from partnership. This is different. A partnership where both partners in this thing, and an animal, right, or whatever, a property, were partners. So that whatever happens to the animal, takes effect for both of us, because we're partners. Even if you do it and I'm the silent partner, okay, still I'm the partner in it, and that's why it works. So maybe all of Israel are partners in this korban, kind of like with the korban tamid, that there's only one korban tamid for the whole nation, but everybody, when you give machasita shekel once a year, that goes into a big storage house, and everybody shares, and every single daily korban tamid. So that is a partnership. That's why it works, but not necessarily as a shaliach. So actually, we have no source from here regarding shalichut. So rather, we're still looking for a source that you can make a shaliach for korban. Elam hachavikhu lahem ish se lebet avot se labayit. When the pasuk says, "You will take each man one sheep for a father's house, one sheep for a household." So you see that one person is taking it on behalf of the rest of the household. Isn't that a messenger? We say no. Maybe that's also a partnership, that everybody in the family, whatever, it could be the cousins, the big family, small family, whatever it is, they're all joining in as partners, not necessarily like a shaliach. Im ken terekere lamali im eno inyan lehecha deshayach teneu inyan lehecha delo shayach. Wait, if this is partnership also, and the previous pasuk was also about partnership, that you could have one for the whole nation, well then you have two pasukim teaching me the same thing, that you can make a partnership for Korban Pesach. I don't need two laws to teach me the same thing, and therefore we apply the rule. It's a very unusual rule. There's a bunch of instances when we apply this. Im eno inyan. If it can't be applied to its context where it is, so then we're going to take this pasuk and apply it out of context. So even though in the context it's talking about partnership, but there's two of them about partnership, so it can't be talking about partnership. Therefore, it must be that this pasuk comes to teach us something in a different area, even though agreeably in this context it is about partnership, but it being an extra verse says, oh, learn something else from it. The other context that we're learning is messengership. So yes, we learn from here that one can make a messenger for Korban Pesach and for any other Korban. Now, not any, for other Korbanot. Hai mi ba'ele lichd bi Yitzchak. Damari bi Yitzchak, kol ish zoche velo katan zoche. Hold on, we actually need this pasuk for a different, to learn a different law of Rabbi Yitzchak, that an adult can acquire something on behalf of others, but a minor can't. That's why it says ish v'yichulahem ish selebet avot. That you need an adult, and any adult in the family can go and acquire a sheep, and he will merit everybody else in the sheep with his acquiring it on their behalf. But a minor does not have the ability to do that. So we already need this pasuk for something else. And we answer no. Hahu me'ish lefi ochlo nafka. We can learn that from the next pasuk in Shemot that says each person according to what he eats. And there also it says ish. And so we can learn that that's an adult and not a child. So this is good. We can use this pasuk for to teach us about shaliach. Now we say, wait, we actually need this pasuk ish lefi ochlo to teach us a different law, that a single person can bring his own Korban Pesach. Usually you bring a whole group, because you're not supposed to leave any over. And so if you bring your own sheep, well, you can do it as long as you're willing to eat the whole thing. And most people can't eat the whole thing. But let's say you're really hungry and you can eat a lot. So is it permitted to bring your own sheep? It is permitted, because ish lefi ochlo, that's singular. So actually we need this pasuk to teach this other law. The answer is savar la keman damad en shochatin ta pesach al yachid. No, we can follow here the opinion of that says that one single person cannot make his own Korban Pesach. It's probably too much for him to eat. And anyway, that's no fun. The whole point of Pesach is to come, be around with friends and family, and you invite strangers and poor people. You have to have a festive meal with other people. You're going to sit there by yourself? That's kind of depressing. So anyway, if we follow that, then we don't need ish lefi ochlo to teach us that, and therefore we can learn all the laws, and we in fact do have a source. That's the doubling. We have two sources regarding partnerships. We don't need two, so we'll use this one to teach us that one can make a messenger. All right, good. So now we have an answer to that. Ve'ela had amar Rav Gidel amar Rav. Pay attention to this name. He's going to come up two more times. Minayin sheshilucho shel adam kemoto. And now we have another problem. We have too many sources to teach me about shaliach. Just now we said, oh no, there's no source for this rabbi. There's no source for that rabbi. But now we have another source. Like, why do we need this one? So anyway, Rav said, how do you know that a person's messenger can act on behalf of himself and is like himself? Take one prince of every tribe, and they are going to take possession of the land on behalf of everybody in their tribe. So you see that this person is a messenger for everybody else in the tribe. Why don't we learn shlichut from this pasuk, and then we don't need the pasukim that we had before? Wait a second, you think that this nasi is working as a shaliach? After all, isn't he acquiring the land on behalf of everybody, men, women, and children? Can a child make a shaliach? He cannot. And so if the Nasi is acquiring on behalf of children too, obviously he's not acting as a messenger Rather, Ela kihad Rava bar Rav Huna, Damar Rava bar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Gidel Amar Rav. See, the second time we have the same Rav Gidel Amar Rav. Minayin shezachin ladam shelo befanav, shenema v'nasi achad v'nasi achad. Okay, so Rav Gidel Amar Rav did not say this and that because they're both quoting the same pasuk, nasi achad mimateh. All right, nasi achad. Rather, this is another version of Rav Gidel Amar Rav statement. We rejected this one. This one, it's kind of like we know that Rav Gidel Amar Rav derived something from this pasuk, but we're not sure exactly what. So at first we assumed that he's deriving shaliach shel adam kemoto, but then we said no, he can't be a shaliach the nasi because he's being sent by children, and children can't send a shaliach. Rather, we update the version. He's saying, how do we know that you can merit some for somebody, even not in their presence? Shene'emad, because it says nasi achad, nasi achad. In other words, the nasi was not acting as a messenger, but rather, according to the very the widespread law, that I can do something for your benefit without you knowing. Right? I find a certain item that I know you like in the street, and I pick it up. I say, for you. I don't want it because that's not interesting to me, but I know you collect this item, and so you would like it. So second I pick it up, it is yours because that's just a benefit for you. It doesn't come with any responsibility or anything. Okay, hold on. Is acquiring a piece of the land of Israel simply a benefit without any disadvantage? Well, you think yes, right? But here's the problem. When the Nasi chooses a portion for his tribe, so that means saying, okay, I'll take this portion and not some other portion. But the people that he's representing might come and say, wait, you picked an area in the hill. I like an area in the valley better. Some people like a place in the hill better, and then he picks it. If he picks it in the valley, he'll say, no, we wanted the hill. So by the Nasi choosing on behalf of everybody this one piece of land, he's agreeing to give up the right to some other portion of land that maybe the people would like better. And so therefore, you can't learn from here zachin ladam shelo befanav, because it's not simply a simple zechut, right? If I find $100 bill, then I can assume, oh, that person, I know he has some bills to pay. He would like this $100 bill. So that's clearly an advantage. But here, it comes along with a possible disadvantage. And therefore, you cannot do it without the other person's knowledge. So now a third version of what Rav actually said to his student Rav Gidel. So how do you know that orphans, their father died, and now, let's say they're minor orphans, and their father died, and now you have a big estate, and so since they're minors, they can't decide what this one should take and that one should take. So the Bet Din will appoint a steward over them, both for disadvantage, and for advantage. In other words, you're going to choose, right? So you want this land over here, okay, fine. The stewards will agree. I'll take this land and not that land. You'll take that land and not this land, and that will mean it could be good for them. It also means that they're giving up a right to something else. But since they're minors and they can't decide themselves, and we can't just leave it in limbo for years, so the stewards will decide. Now so how do we know that? Now we interrupt to ask, Lachov amai, ela lachov amanat liskot. Wait, why would a steward do something bad for a person as a disadvantage? No, the answer is it might be a disadvantage now in the short term, but it's for advantage later on. So a steward might say, listen, I'm willing to take this piece of land for my client here, even though this land is going to require a lot of input, a lot of investment, because it's not as good as the other land. But he sees that with investment, it's actually a better piece of land, and it will end up being good. So a steward can make that assessment on behalf of the orphan. Okay, now back to the baraita, back to the statement. How do you know this? Talmud Lomar v'nasi achad memateh tikhu, because it says the nasi will take on behalf of every tribe, and so they're acting as stewards for everyone, including the children that are in each tribe. And even though you can, some of the Nasi'im will say, you know what, I think I'm going to take the hill. I agree to take the hill country on behalf of my tribe. And even though it would be good for some, it's bad for some people, but it's overall, we have to trust the Nasi, just like, and from there you can learn that you should also trust a steward to say, this land, this deal is good for the orphan that I'm representing, even though he might be choosing a long-term gain, and that might include a short-term loss. So in fact, this is what we're learning from the Pasuk, and we are not learning anything that we set up here regarding shelichut. So actually, there's no problem. We don't have an extra pasuk for shelichut because we're using it already. We're using it instead for something else entirely. Now, since we mentioned the law of steward taking care of property of an orphan, we're going to go further into that topic. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shemuel, Yetomim sheba'u lachlok minichsei avihem, betin ma'amidin lahen apotropos, o borin lahem chalek yafeh. Rav Nachman, the student of Shemuel, said in his name that when orphans come to divide a property that they inherited from their father, so betin will appoint for them stewards, and they will each orphan will have their own steward, and they will choose a good portion for on behalf of them. However, when they become adults and they can come and look and say, this is what my steward chose for me, no, I don't like it, I disagree. So then they can disagree with what the determination was, and they can re-divide it. That's the opinion of Rav Nachman in the name of Shemuel. However, Rav Nachman didei amar imigdilu enam yecholin limchot imken makoch bet din yafeh. Rav Nachman himself did not agree with what he learned from Shemuel, and he said when they grow up they cannot protest, because if they can protest, then where's the power of the court? Right? The court appointed these stewards, so they should have authority. I mean, if I give someone authority, here, take this stuff and sell it, and any price you get is fine. But then, and then I add, but if I don't like the price, then I change, then I take it back. Well, then I'm not really giving the person authority. So where's the authority of the court if they could say, okay, yes, we'll oversee the division, but then when they grow up, they can change their minds and redivide it. So then the court looks like it's impotent. Okay, so Rav Nachman says we have to take into account the power of the court. Now we ask, wait a second, does Rav Nachman hold of this principle that we have to uphold the power of the court? Here is a case where Rav Nachman says the opposite. It's a similar case. There's a Mishnah in Masechet Ketubot that when judges come to appraise something, like if the orphan's estate is going to sell something, so the court will give an estimation of how much it's worth, an appraisal. But let's say they make a mistake and they're off by more than a six too little, or over a sixth of the real price too much. If they do that, then the sale is invalid. Either way, either you're cheating the buyer or the seller. That's the opinion of Tanakama. However, Rashbag says the sale is valid, because otherwise, where's the power of the Bet Din? We said, okay, we can't let have a fire sale on orphan's property. We have to make sure that it's going to be fair. How do you make sure? Put it in the hands of the Bet Din. Well, if you give authority to the Bet Din, then that's it. They have authority. You're going to say, well, Bet Din, we give it to the Bet Din, but only if they're right. If they're within a small margin of error, but if there's an error, then no, then you change it. That's the Tanakama. Rashbag says, well, then you're not giving them authority. Authority means whatever they say goes. So, and Rav Nachman said about that the halachas chachamim, that it's no good. So they don't hold of this idea that the court has authority no matter what they say, only if they get it right. So now we have a contradiction, because here he said that if the orphans grow up, they cannot protest whatever the court said by appointing the stewards, and whatever they agreed to, it sticks, and they can't protest. And here it says that if their court was wrong, then it's undone. The sale is null and void. So which is it? And the answer is la kashya, ha de ta'u, ha de la ta'u. When Rav Nachman ruled that the transaction is void because the assessment was more than a sixth off, that's when they made a mistake. So indeed, when they make a mistake, it's void. Basically, we don't give the court power to decide whatever they want. Whereas the other case, when he says the orphans can protest when they grow up, that's in the case where the court and the stewards did not make a mistake. They did not misassess anything. It was a proper division, and therefore they cannot protest when they grow up. Now we ask on that, wait a second, if they didn't make a mistake when they divided it, then what are they protesting? This was a fair division. You got half, you got half, everything's fine. What's the point of protest? And the answer is, they could still protest regarding the direction or location. So even though they got half the field, let's say it's two people, you got half, I got half the field. Yeah, but I don't like my location. I want the field that's closer over there to my other fields or to my home. And so I protest the location. That they have a right to protest. If otherwise it's just a fair division, everybody's good, then they would not protest. And if there's an actual mistake, then in fact, according to Rav Nachman, they can protest. Good. Now we're going to quote another statement of Rav Nachman on the same subject. Amar Rav Nachman, Hachin shechalku harehen kalakohot. When two brothers divide an estate, they have the same laws as someone buying something from the other when it comes to overcharging and undercharging. As follows, there's three categories. Pachot mishetut nikne mikach. If the overcharging or undercharging was less than a sixth of the correct value, then the sale goes through, the division is valid. Yater al shetut batel mikach. If I sell you something and I overcharge you more than a sixth, or you pay less than a sixth under, then the sale is void. And so too, brothers who divide in such a way, and one gets more than the sixth, more than the other, then the division is void. Shetut, kana machzir hona'ah. If it's exactly 1/6, then the sale is valid, but I would have to return to you, if I overcharged you 1/6, I would have to return to you that extra 1/6 of money. Or if it was a division, we would accept a division, but the discrepancy of the sixth, one brother would have to give to the other. That's Rav Nachman's statement. He's a third generation Amora. And so now Rava comes in the next generation and elaborates further. Hadamaran pachot mishetut nikte mikach, lamaran ela de la shavye shaliach. Aval shavye shaliach, amar l'takone shedartich, vela la'avute. When it says that when there's less than a sixth of overcharging, then it's a valid sale. And so too bad, right? So it's a little bit more. So whatever, if you paid a little bit more, that's okay. It's still within the margin of error. That's only true if you came and bought it yourself and I overcharged you just a little bit. Then the sale is valid. But let's say you sent a messenger to buy it for your behalf and I overcharged the messenger even less than a sixth, then the sale is invalid because you, as the sender, can say, I sent you to do something for my benefit, right? I sent you to buy this $100 item and then you paid $103. I don't want to pay $103. So if you come yourself, so then you have to buyer beware to that extent. Not total buyer beware, but within 1/6, it's your responsibility to figure it out. But if you send a shaliach, then you can say, he was not my shaliach. He didn't do a good job. Nifligan b'shuma de bedina. Niflog b'shuma de bedina michran kayam. And when we say that brothers who divide an estate, it's more than a sixth, then the sale is valid, or in the case of the brothers, the division is invalid because it's more than a sixth. That's only true if they didn't tell each other beforehand, let's divide according to the appraisal of the Bet Din. But if before they started they agreed, we're going to divide it based on the appraisal of the Bet Din, whatever they say goes, then even if the Bet Din ends up making a mistake and they assess something more than a sixth over its value or under its value, nevertheless it's valid because they agreed to it, which makes sense. Now we do bring a Mishnah to support this, Ditnan shuma dayanin shepichatu shitot or she'otiru shitut michran batel. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer michran kayam. Tana Kama here says that if the judges assess something and that's too little or too much by a sixth, then it's invalid. But Rava here is following Rashbag that says it is valid. So why is it valid? So he's assuming that the reason why Rashbag would say it's valid is because they agreed to it in the first place, and therefore, no matter what they say, we agreed to it and it's valid. And the last statement that Rav Nachman said, that if it's exactly a sixth, the sale is valid or division is valid, but you have to return the added unfair amount, that's only regarding movable objects. But regarding with land, here's the general principle. There is no fraud when it comes to land. Even if I overcharged you, that's it. That's the price. And you see today, right? You see around here, there's a 2x4 piece of land. Someone comes and pays $3 million. Why can he come say, oh, you overcharged me? Well, that's the price. People pay crazy prices for land. They want to be near their in-laws for some reason. I don't know why, but they want this piece of land. So when it comes to movable objects, well, you overcharged me. I could have bought the same camera somewhere else. So that doesn't, then it's invalid. But land has a special value for people, so that an overcharged piece of land, we don't say it's an overcharge, and the sale goes through, and you don't have to pay back the added amount. Now, even in that, there's a limitation. And that even when we said that regarding land, there's no ona'ah, that's only if they divide it by value. So they said, listen, I'm going to take this $10,000 piece of land over here, and you take that other side over there that's worth $10,000. Now, if they do it that way, and in the end they assess, and it's not precisely correct, and it's off by a sixth or more, then the sale is still valid, right? Because that was their assessment, so that's fine. But if they divided it according to the measurement, that they said, I'm going to get this 100 feet of this land, and it's very good land, so you get 200 feet of that land, which is inferior land, and they divide it that way. Well, then there is ona'ah, because that's a specific amount, and Rabbah talked about selling very specific amounts and said anything that is measured or weighed or numerated, even if it's less than a sixth difference, you have to return it. If I buy a dozen eggs from you, I go home and I see there's only 11 eggs. I come back and say, hey, there's only 11 eggs in here. You can't say, well, it's off by less than a sixth, so it's your loss. No, I want a dozen eggs. I want 12. Or I bought a pound of something. Or we said, I'm going to get 100 feet of this land, and in the end you put the marker in the wrong place and it's a foot less. You can't say, oh, it's less than a sixth off. No, it's an exact, when it's an exact amount, then there is ona'ah, and you have to return it. We only say the rule that there's no ona'ah regarding land when you fix a price, and the price turns out to be somewhat more or somewhat less. Next, v'haditnan hasholech et ha'be'ira b'yad חירש שוטה וקטן פטור מדיני אדם וחייב בדיני שמיים שילח ביד פיקח chayav. So now we have another law about agency, that if I send some burning item, right, a fire, a blaze, and I send it with someone who is either deaf or not all there, or a minor, and they go down and they take this item, and without thinking, because they're not fully responsible, they take this to someone else's field and they burn it down. Who is responsible? So the sender, I am patur in the hands of a court, because if it brings me to court, I say, well, this is not an actual messenger. A חירש שוטה וקטן cannot be a shaliach. So just because I told him to do it doesn't make him my responsibility. responsibility. It's different if I, throw something or send an animal, then it's going because of my agency, because I'm doing something. That's actually kind of direct. Whereas here, I'm sending another human being, but that human being does not have competence to be able to do it on my behalf. So they did it on their own. So therefore, I say, sorry, I don't have to pay, even though in the hands of heaven I am liable, and the heavenly Bet Din will take account of that. And now, if I send it in the hand and with a competent person, I say, listen, take this blazing thing and go to that person's field, all right? And that person listens to me, and they go and burn it down. The messenger is chayav, and I am patur. Even though I sent him, but he should have known better. So we explain, hold on, we just proved from 100 different ways that a person's messenger is like himself. So if I told another competent adult, go burn down that guy's field, and he goes and does it, how come you don't say I'm responsible, since he did it for me? Very important principle. Here it's different because there's no messengership when it comes to a sin, because we say, if a master tells you something and a student says something, who should you listen to, right? If someone's working in Microsoft and their direct supervisor says do A, and Bill Gates walks by and says no, don't do A, and what should that employee do? Obviously, listen to Bill Gates. Your direct supervisor, he himself has to listen to Bill Gates. So, by analogy, lehavdil, right? If God said you should not burn things down, you should do mitzvot, you should not do sins, and then some person, human being, doesn't matter who it is, says go and sin. So the person who is competent has to know that he should listen to the Torah and ignore the person. Therefore, that competent individual who went and burned down the field is responsible, and he can't blame the other guy and says, well, I was just following orders. We now bring a challenge from a Braita to this principle that you just said, that en shaliach l'vavera. Here, look at this case where shaliach is held responsible for making a sin. A shaliach that does not do his proper job, the shaliach does me'ilah. So let's say I go and I tell this messenger, go take that. I have money in 2 drawers. One of the money is chol, the other money I sanctified, and it's holy money, cannot be used. I told him, go to the top drawer with the unsanctified money and buy me something. He doesn't listen to me. He by mistake, he's not paying attention, and he goes to the drawer with sanctified money, and he takes that money and uses it. So that's the problem of me'ilah. Who's responsible? The shaliach is responsible, because he didn't do what I said. He acted against my will. He did it on his own. So he's responsible. However, if he does the shlichut, I told him to go to the second drawer with the consecrated money. I told him to do that, and he did exactly what I said. Well, then I'm responsible because he is working on my behalf. Now we ask, since he's doing my messengership, I'm responsible. Why don't we apply the principle that there's no such thing as a messenger for an avera? You just said there's no such thing as a messenger for avera. Here, I sent him and told him, go use that consecrated money to buy me something. He did what I said. We should say that he's responsible because he has to listen to God also. How come over here the sender is responsible? The answer is Shane Me'ilah. Me'ilah is an exception. We have a just like for Tirumah, I can appoint someone to take Tirumah for me. So too, regarding Me'ilah, I can appoint someone. If I tell someone, go do this thing, and it's a violation of Me'ilah, even though it's a sin, he is a messenger, and I, the sender, am responsible. Okay, good. Now we ask, since you have one case where sending someone to do a sin, and the sender is responsible, and that's me'ilah, why don't we use that as a paradigm and say, anytime someone sends someone to do a sin, the sender is responsible, right? If I hire a hitman, who's responsible, right? The sender or the hitman? So if we have one example, why don't we learn from all the rest? Because actually we have another example. We have a general rule that whenever you have 2 examples of something, then the Torah is going out of its way to mention those 2, to say, only those two is where it's true, and you cannot generalize it. What's the other one? Shilichut yad, if a watchman misuses something for himself. He's supposed to watch it, and instead he goes and uses it. So Me'ilah is one we mentioned. Shilichut yad maihi. What's the law of misuse of a watchman? Detanya al kol devar pesha. Bet Shammai omrim lechayav al machshava ke'maaseh. Bet Hillel mimeno chayav ad sheishlach bo yad shneimar im lo shalach yado. So this involves a lengthy braita machloket. We'll see the point at the end between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. Bet Shammai says, even if the watchman thinks of misappropriating it, right? He says in front of witnesses, this item I have that the guy, he told me to watch his car, right? I'm going to go and drive it cross country, and I state that, and I think of doing it, I'm already liable, as the same as if I actually did it. Bet Hillel says, no, I'm only liable if I actually went and used his car when I was supposed to watch it, because it says if he did not put his hand to the item and used it. Now the conversation. Amru Bet Shammai leBet Hillel. Al kol devar pesha. Bet Shammai says there's an expansive term on any matter of trespass. That's inclusive. That comes to include also declaration of thought. Amru lahem Bet Hillel leBet Shammai. V'lo ne'amar im lo shalach yado b'mlechet re'ahu. But Bet Hillel points out that the pasuk says if he didn't put his hand and actually do it. So that means if he only if he actually does an action, not just thinks about it. Amru Bet Shammai Bet Hillel ken al kol devar pesha lamali. So Bet Shammai says, fine, then what are you going to do with the pasuk that is expansive and says any matter? And his answer is shechol en li elahu amar lavdo v'shilucho minayin tamod lomar al kol devar pesha. Because otherwise I might have thought that only if I, the watchman, go and use the car, then I'm liable. But what if I tell someone else to use it? I send them as a messenger to my slave or to my shaliach to use it. I might have thought then I'm not responsible because the shaliach is responsible for his own actions. That's why it says al kol devar pesha, according to Bet Hillel, comes to include that a messenger is liable and not the sender. So here we have two laws, shilichut yad and me'ilah. In both of these cases, the messenger is responsible and not the sender. And the fact that Torah says two cases means those are the exceptions, and we cannot learn to all other cases. And so we're totally good. Hanicha lebet Hillel. There's two exceptions, but otherwise the rule sticks. En shaliach lidvar avera. But according to Bet Shammai, who does not have this teaching, because he uses a pasuk for thought, and so according to him, if I ask a messenger, hey, take this car that I'm supposed to watch, then in fact the messenger would be liable, not the sender. So now we're down to only one case of me'ilah, and so you should use that and extrapolate to all laws. So how's Bet Shammai going to answer that? Mishum dava me'ilah utvicha umechira shtekrim bim keachad v'chol shtekrim bim keachad and melamedin, because there is yet another law of the thief that steals something, an animal, and if then he slaughters it or sells it, then he has to pay 4 or 5 times. And in that case also, if you do it with a messenger, the sender is liable. And so you have, in fact, even according to Bet Shammai, also 2 examples that come to teach the same thing, and therefore they cannot be used as a paradigm. Let's explain. Me'ilah hadamaran. Me'ilah, we know that case already. Tevicha mechira mahida amar kera utvacho o mecharo ma mechira aida acher af tevicha aida acher. We're comparing the two. Just like when the thief sells it to someone, he needs someone else to make a sale. You can't sell something to yourself. So that's obviously going to involve a third party, and even though it involves a third party, nevertheless, the thief is liable 4 or 5 times for stealing it and selling it. So to slaughtering it, if the thief goes to the butcher and brings this sheep that he stole and asks the butcher, can you slaughter this on my behalf? And the butcher slaughters it, the thief is still responsible, even though he sent the messenger. And in general, and shaliach lidvar avera, this is a dvar avera because it's stolen goods. And nevertheless, this is an exception to the rule that the thief is nevertheless responsible. And therefore, Bet Shammai also has 2 examples, and we do not extrapolate from 2 examples. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.